Hey, this is Jacob, back with Lansweeper Pro Tip 59, importing data with the Lansweeper API. Now, I like custom fields. I use them on-premise custom fields all the time. I integrate with other applications and I bring in data, run scripts, and save them to custom fields. They're my best friend. They never let me down. Now, a drawback to on-premise custom fields is that you're limited to 20. And in a previous pro tip, I showed that you can synchronize those with Lansweeper Sites, which is great. But I want more custom fields. So, thankfully, within the past few months, the Lansweeper team and the developers of the API have added the ability to modify assets in their API. So now's a great chance for me to figure out how to do that and do a pro tip. So without further ado, here is the example of using a CSV to update these custom fields. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to create the custom fields in Lansweeper Sites. So in order to do that, you go over to your inventory, and down here, click Manage Custom Fields and Add New Custom Field. Now, in this example, I've already made the custom fields, but it's CSV test field underscore custom 1 underscore custom 2 and underscore custom 3. You can just name it right here, for example, but I've already added them. Now, the next step is you take your CSV and you just want to make sure that it starts with, or actually it is, the fields that you specified in Lansweeper Sites, and it is case sensitive. So there's your custom 1, custom 2, and custom 3 CSV test fields. Now, I also added some unique identifiers here for the assets, and this will be used for the asset lookup or asset match. One is the serial number, the MAC address, the IP address, and the fully qualified domain name. So that's what we have in our CSV, along with a few values, just some test values for these custom fields. The first asset being value 1, value 2, value 3. The second asset being value 4, value 5, and value 6. So now that we have the custom fields, the next thing we want to do is give ourselves access to the API. And how you do that is you go down to your profile icon and you click, go to Developer Tools, API Clients. Now from here, you just click Add New API Client, and we're going to do the OAuth type, not just a personal token, but we're going to do the whole real deal. The OAuth is an authorization code where you then pass a client ID and a client secret, and you obtain your token and your refresh token. So let's get this going. So for the API client name, I am going to name it, like I always do, something very descriptive. Test API client name. And the description is, this is a test. Now, for this particular one, I use Postman, and I will be showing you Postman. And they have a callback URL. You can use their API that will actually validate the authorization code. I'm not sure what other ones there are, but in this particular case, I signed up with Postman to use theirs. And I'll show you how it's done in a second. And for integration, we don't actually, here's all the different integrations that we have, but we are going to do our own, and we're going to call it other, and we're going to call it, this is my test. Very descriptive. So we're going to continue. And right here, we are, you get your client ID and your client secret. So what you're going to do is you're going to download it. Once you download it, you have your credentials right here, which includes your client ID, your client secret, your authorization URL, which Lansweeper Sites uses. For this particular case, it uses it automatically. That's for if you want to include it or incorporate it with a real application. And your callback URL, which is again the URL used to authenticate the validate the authorization code. So the next thing we're going to use is Postman. So Postman is great for testing APIs. Everybody who is cool uses it. So I thought, hey, let me pretend to be cool. Let me try to use it. So Postman, you generally set up a set of steps in a collection. So these are actions, get data, post data, delete data, etc. And it works, the API works just like a web page. It is a web service. It has URLs, and you pass it information and it performs some sort of action. Now, I gave you the file in the blog article to import that has all the information, and you basically just go import and you select, you can select the file here, wherever you put it. And I definitely don't want to do folder, I want to do files. And you can import your config files from the authorization, the Postman collection, and there you go. So from here, what we want to do is we want to store all our variables in an environment. So here I made Lansweeper API, and here are all the variables, and it's in the blog post that you will need to get this going. So a lot of these are populated by the steps themselves when you run it, but the ones you're going to need to pre-populate come from the downloaded file, and that will be your client ID. We'll take that, paste it, and the client secret. And put that there. And that's actually, that's what we need. And now we need the authorization code. So we're going to go back, and we're done downloading the file. And we are going to click this authorize right here, which is then going to generate the authorization code after you select the site that you want. Now, this particular example will only do a single site. You can, if you have multiple sites here, you can select all the sites that you want your application to have access to. In this particular case, my example only works for one. I only happen to have one here, but just choose one for this example. So right here, the callback URL, which was the Postman API, authorized it and gave me the code. So you copy that code and you go down back to your environment variables under the authorization underscore code, and you paste it. So right here is your ID, your secret, and your authorization code. And you will save the environment variable, and you'll go back to the collection of steps, which involves authorizing, getting the token, getting the sites, getting the assets, getting the custom fields and updating the custom fields. So right here is a one-time step that uses the authentication code. Generally only have to use it one time, and you will get your token and your refresh token and your expiration time for the token. And right here, it's all in red. So their environment variables, and make sure that over here you specify the environment. So right here, when you hover over, it already has the environments from my variables. So right here, the neat thing about Postman that I didn't know is it has a scripts section where you can do a pre-request script, which means before you actually send the request, which has something in the body, some codes, some commands. Before you actually send that, you can run a set of scripts yourself to manipulate the data, to set variables, etc. And then a post-response script, which means after you receive the data back from the API, you can then do something with it or create a script to modify it, set variables, etc. I have all this. You can check the JSON files themselves or look through the blog article. I did some explanations there. But basically, in a nutshell, this one will send the ID, the secret, and the auth code, and it will store the variables. It will set the access token variable, the token expiration variable, and importantly, the refresh token. Now, the refresh token will be used if the token expires. It will query with the refresh token, which lasts longer, to get a new token. So right here, we're just setting the variables, and you will see in the environment variables, which are right here and only contain the 3 that we put in, you will see it in just a second populate with those variables that we set here. So let's go ahead. We have our codes. We've authorized it on the page, and we've copied it in. Fingers crossed. We're going to send the request. And there you go. So right here, it says we got a code 200, which means it worked. And right here, you have your access token, this really long thing right here. It is a bearer token as far as the token type, and we're going to need that when you send requests. But I have that already in the collection steps, as well as your expiration date and your refresh token. And if you go back to the environment variables, due to the post processing script, we set those variables. So we have our refresh token, we have our expiration time, and we have our access token. So now that we have all of that, we can go to our main script. And this right here, since it uses the same environment variable, or same environment for the variables, it already has what it needs to send a request for a new token, because it's going to use the refresh token. We don't need to use the authorization code anymore, so you can use the refresh token. So again, it has the variables. We're going to send the client ID, the client secret, and the refresh token. And again, like the other one, we have a pre-request and a post-request script. In the pre-request, since we authorized, and I just showed you the variables, we have the refresh token, so we're going to get it. We have the, well, that's all we need, sorry, is the refresh token. So if we don't have it, it's going to tell you that you need to authenticate. So you're going to actually go and need to run the authorized collection again. After that, you run the post script, And what that does is that sets the access token and the token expiration. And it also, if it gives you a new one, it'll also give you, it sets the refresh token. The next step is it gets the authorized sites. So like we set up the site in the GUI and gave it that one site, it will get that site through this query right here. It says, give me the authorized sites. And long story short, we passed it the token, so it knows the token to use, and it sets the site ID and moves on to the next step, which is getting all the asset IDs. And this is the one of the neat things here, is it iterates this PM.iteration data. It will iterate or go through a set of data, in this case, the CSV, and it will get the serial number, MAC address, IP address, and fully qualified domain name after you pass it the site ID. And it will give you the asset ID once it matches. It'll give you the asset ID and you will pass it to getting all of the custom field keys for the asset. So again, this pre-request for this step you'll get the token, you'll get the site ID, and you will get the asset IDs, and you will get the fields. So next, the get custom field keys, you will query the site ID and get all the custom keys that there are. So this will say, hey, I have 19 custom fields. Here's all the 19 custom fields. Before we do that though, the pre-request will say, give me the keys that start with that CSV test field. So right here is the filter that will query just those fields that you want. And it will then pass the keys to the next step, which is updating the custom fields. So right here you have what's called a mutation. It says mutation, and that means you're going to perform some sort of update action. And right here it's a little complicated, but you are going to string together those fields to then pass it into this custom fields variable. Long story short, it updates all the custom fields and you're done. So fingers crossed. Another neat thing about Postman is you have a collection runner. So you will say run collection. We have all of our variables set. And here's another cool thing. You select a file and you can go to your CSV file, and you can see here it changed the iterations to 2. And you can test, okay, I want to do 5 rows. Now I only have 2, so that's why it says iterations 2. And you can preview, and there's my data right here. And you run it. And it will give you, I put an 8-second delay in so you don't flood the API. But right here we have all 200. We're looking good. And we should be good. So if we go to one of the assets in the CSV, which is desktop, blah, 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 something long. We'll go here. And look up that asset. You will see value 1, value 2, and value 3. And that's how you do it. And this opens up a whole bunch of possibilities as far as taking a CSV, say from a monitoring system like PRTG, which you can query and it will save all your device information and sensors as a CSV. You can then send it over and you can preface the fields as PRTG dash something. So then you can specify that in your CSV. You can make your custom fields and you can modify the Postman script to look for something that starts with PRTG. You can do SCOM, you can do SCCM, you can do PowerShell scripts, you can do all sorts of things now with this, with Postman and with the CSV. Now, the last thing is, I said, well, how do you automate this? And there is a little application called Newman. And of course, you have Postman and you have Newman, which Newman delivers the mail in Seinfeld TV show. So there you go. Thought that was kind of cute. So with Newman, and I provided installation instructions in the article, but this is pretty cool. What you do is once you can either just import the, you can edit the JSON files and put your variables in if you're experienced with this, but in any case, you export and you can export as a JSON file. And so you'll export your working steps here, and you'll export your environment variables here. Now, when you export the environment variables, due to security reasons, it will remove the values of those variables. So once you export it, you will need to put it back, put those little the secret and the client ID and the refresh token and the token back into that JSON file. Now, just want to say it's very important that you protect this information. It really should not reside in unencrypted means. Like, it shouldn't just sit in the JSON file. So they have services, Google, AWS, and Azure, and many others have secret management systems to manage those secrets and IDs and tokens. However, you can use OpenSSL. You can encrypt the file, and then before you run Newman, you can decrypt it, run Newman, and then you can delete the unencrypted file. So it will only be unencrypted when it's actually running. Okay, so we're going to pull up Postman, and it is basically, it's Newman run. You give it the collection JSON, you give it the environment JSON, and then you give it your CSV. So you run it, and there you go. Just like you see it in Postman, it will go through. It will create the body and the requests, and it will perform the pre-script and the post-request scripts, and it will update the custom fields. So right there, you have 2 iterations. It went through the 2 data, and everything went just fine. So now you can schedule this to run and perform other actions in a script, such as, process a CSV, move it somewhere, rename it so then you can automate scooping up a CSV. And that is how you do it for Postman, Newman, and updating custom fields in the API. Thanks for staying with me if you're still awake, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks.